Hello, hello.
I'm Savannah.
And I'm Elysia.
And this is Burden of Proof.
Welcome.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Welcome if this is your first time. We appreciate
you being here.
Yeah.
We finish each other's
sentences. No, we don't.
I promise we don't.
Sometimes we do.
Yeah, sometimes. I've noticed that's a habit I have gotten into with conversations that's probably really annoying.
I don't know, but now I'll notice it.
Of course. Now I'll notice it, too. It's like manual breathing. And now you're all breathing manually.
I'm taking a deep breath. Okay. So, we don't really have any news.
No business up top today.
It's been a wild couple of weeks. We're recording not real early, but a little bit early.
Yeah, just a little bit early.
It's summer. What's there,
It's hot here.
It's so hot. It's so hot everywhere.
I know. We move a little slower in the Florida summer here. Normally we're like 3 or 4 weeks ahead, but with all like summer plans and stuff, we're only like
a couple
2 weeks ahead.
Yeah.
And that's my fault. Whoopsies. Sorry.
It happens. I actually wish that we could record like week by week.
Yeah.
Because then we wouldn't sound like we never know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be, closer. It would make more sense.
Yeah. Sometimes we say stuff and Alicia's like, that's not the right day. This is coming out 9 weeks in advance or something.
So that's a bit tricky. We haven't quite gotten the hang of that, but we will someday, I suppose.
Well, when we're podcast famous and we have
or
a team.
Or
it's not just...
when this is our full-time gig instead of part-time side thing. Yeah. Hopefully that happens.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is the dream.
We've made the big switch a couple weeks ago at this point when this is coming out.
Exactly.
We will have made the big switch to Spotify.
Yes. So a lot of you guys, we used to host on a platform called Podbean, which, I mean, when we say a hosting service, it just means that that's who not owns it, but like holds it. And then they send it out to a bunch of different platforms. We have since switched over to Spotify, who has their own hosting service.
Mm-hmm.
And then we use Spotify to then send it out to all of the podcast platforms. There's your podcast lesson for the day.
And that being said, we weren't really unhappy with Podbean.
Oh, absolutely not.
They do a great job. It's just we realized a lot of our listeners, we had a big jump in Spotify listeners, and we realized this may be a smart move for us.
Yeah, we wanted to lean into that, to the Spotify boom that we had. So thank you to all of our Spotify listeners.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. We love you guys. Spotify is my listening platform.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else I know uses Apple Podcasts. So it's we get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I typically use Spotify as well, even though I have an iPhone.
Spotify, if you're listening to this, we should be your next Spotify original. Okay. Email us, burdenofproofpod@gmail.com. We would love to work with you. We'll sign any contract you send our way.
Well, not any.
No, that's not true. We do read our contracts thoroughly.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So,
anyway,
with all that out of the way,
if you missed us, it would have been the week of the Joel Kirkpatrick case is that we made the switch. So if we were gone from your feed for any particular reason, we should be back up and running now. There was not very much downtime, but I think that for some platforms, there was a little bit of a lag between swaps.
Yes, that's true.
There she blows. Yo ho, yo ho. A pirate's life for me.
Not for me. I don't want to be. I've read Outlander. I don't want to be on a ship. Back then.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, no. No, thank you. All right. Are you ready?
Kind of. I've gotten some sneak peeks for this case for 2 weeks now, and I'm not sure if I'm ready, but...
Are you ready to rumble?
Let's get ready to rumble.
I know. But you're going to want to rumble.
Rumble and grumble.
And grumble. And be generally angry.
Okay.
My apologies. I couldn't pass it up, especially with everything going on in the world currently. The big debate.
Yeah, we're recording this the week of the first president. Well, I don't know if it was the first, but the presidential debate that was abysmal. If you're from a different country that's not the United States, look away. This is our family shame. It's not. It's our Thanksgiving dinner conversation. It's not for the world to see. We know it's
but
bad.
Unfortunately, it is.
We didn't have a choice in this. Don't say that we did, because we didn't.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, man.
All right, let's get angry in a different way. So, today's case, if you read the title, you already know, is about Eridania Rodriguez. It all took place on July 7th, 2009. Eridania was 46 at the time. She was an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. She came to the U.S. in 1973.
That's the year my mom was born.
And she married... Oh, this is a name, and I know I'm going to butcher it, and I'm so sorry. Geronimo Figuera? Can you...
Yes, let me
See if you can pronounce that better than I.
Oh, it's Geronimo.
But they pronounce it like an H because it's
Geronimo
Spanish.
I can never say that. Figuera.
Yeah.
I know so many people with this last name, and it's just my mouth doesn't make the shape necessary.
The shape. I'm sorry, I'm white.
I'm trying really hard.
That's all I can say.
We should have Nicholas record a clip of him saying it, because he can good
say
at
it
stuff
good
like that. Yeah.
Okay. The two got married and had 3 children. I believe all of their children were daughters.
Girl mom.
Yes. Eridania was from a very tight-knit family and was especially motherly towards her brothers. This was especially important when she and her husband divorced and she became a single mom of the 3 kids.
No more Geronimo.
He comes back into the picture.
Oh.
So that's not too sad, but yeah, they split up for a while. Like many immigrants, she worked hard to provide opportunities for her children that she had not been afforded. And the night of July 7th, 2009 was no different. She was at her cleaning job at 2 Rector Street, a commercial building in the financial district of New York City. While not a skyscraper to today's standards, the early 20th century building stands rather large at 26 stories, housing 69 commercial units.
That's a big building. It's bigger than my building.
Yeah. Eridania's shift was from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m., and according to her family and coworkers, she followed a consistent routine every night she worked. Because of that consistency, her coworker Rosa called Eridania's home around 10:30, asking if she were home. Eridania's daughter answered and immediately felt like something's wrong. Like, what do you mean she's not? You don't know where she is. And Rosa explained that Eridania had not met her for lunch at 7 p.m. as they usually do. Rosa said that she tried calling Eridania's cell phone, but it was going straight to voicemail, and that she checked around and no one had seen or talked to her since before, like, basically since the start of their shift.
Right.
Because they would all meet, I think they had like a locker room or something,
right.
And then they would all split up in the building, and they each had certain floors or certain units that they cleaned. So Eridania's daughter immediately called the entire family, including aunts and uncles. They all decided to meet at the building and start looking for her, because Eridania's brother, Cesar, worked the day shift in the same building as a security guard.
Okay.
So he had access and he knew the building in and out. He said that they went to every floor that she normally would have been working, including the basement, because though she didn't like particularly work in the basement, they have to sometimes take stuff down there. And they were literally running through the building, like screaming her name, looking at any place that they could. She was nowhere to be found. He went back to the security office and looked at security footage and confirmed that she had arrived to work and that she was seen on the floor that she regularly worked on, but there was no footage of her leaving the building. So they called the police to file a missing persons report because, as we said in one of my recent cases, you don't have to wait. If you know that somebody's potentially missing, call right away.
Also, she's missing like in a building.
Yeah.
So we should be able
it's not making sense.
Right. I mean, like, it's not hide and seek, but it's starting to feel like that a little.
Yes. So by 8 a.m. the next morning, several precincts and departments across New York City were talking about the missing cleaning woman, and an entire team of officers and detectives were at 2 Rector Street searching for Eridania. One detective commented on the fact that her entire family was there, which he said was very telling because they rarely saw that in New York City.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's not a lot of like huge families.
Yeah, so they took it very seriously because they're like, her entire family is showing up. And like, so this must be out of character for her. It's,
Right.
The family stressed to the detectives that she would always go directly home after work. So even if she had left work early, it was completely out of character for her to go anywhere else. Like, she was I go to work, I go home, I take care of my family kind of person. Rosa, the coworker, confirmed that it was also out of the ordinary for Eridania to leave without notifying someone at work.
Yeah.
Within 12 hours of her missing, the case drew media attention, which always really puts the pressure on detectives. At that point in the search, it became quite a production, because the hundreds of people who are there throughout the day began arriving to work to find a whole crew.
Right. They're like, I need to sit at my desk and crunch the numbers.
Right. But they needed to evacuate everyone from the building.
Yeah, you can't.
So they're like, you can't come in. And then the media's there. So there's all these interviews of people who work in the building being interviewed by the media. And of course, people are kind of, like, it's scary. There could be a dead woman in there. Like, we don't know what's going on. So that just added to the drama. So they began to conduct their formal search throughout the building. According to one detective, this was a very unique case because the building is like a, quote, self-contained environment, in that there was only a few ways in and out of the building.
Okay.
Being that there was no security footage of her leaving through those exits, they felt certain she had to still be inside. But searching was an incredibly daunting task. Inside her locker, they found her purse and other personal items, which everyone agreed, like, she would not have left without this.
She didn't leave willingly.
Correct.
If she left at all, for sure.
And on the 8th floor of the building, they found her work cart, and nearby on the floor was her hair clip. Clearly, she didn't just leave on her own.
No.
So the detectives began rounding up all the people who were in the building with her that evening for interviews. And at this point, they're racing the clock. She had been missing for 14 hours, and they knew the longer it took to find her, the less likely she'd be alive. While several detectives worked on interviews, another got to work on reviewing the footage from all 32 security cameras.
So many. That sounds like the most tedious task.
It is. Detective Brian McLeod is known as, quote, video god amongst his colleagues for his patience and keen eye when it comes to scanning video footage.
Look at you, McLeod.
Yeah. So he's the one looking through all the footage.
They said, I know who we need to call.
Yeah, they did.
The video god.
Yes. He spotted Eridania getting on the elevator with her cart to start her shift around 5:12 p.m. but that was literally it. Like, in the beginning of her shift.
Wow.
He didn't see her at any other time or point in the building or leaving the building. Meanwhile...
So whatever floor she got off on didn't have any footage of her then?
Well, not at first.
Okay. I'll stop.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it.
Meanwhile, a detective also interviewed family members to get a better picture of Eridania's personal life. Because they weren't ruling out, like, somebody that she knew outside of work could have come. So they found out that how close she and her entire family were, and that she was really a great woman who worked hard to take care of her family. Except they also found out that she and her ex-husband had recently reconciled, and he was the only family member to stay at the house or apartment while everybody else went out looking for her. So they were a bit suspicious of him.
Why didn't he come?
But they ultimately determined that he had an alibi. He had been working until 8 p.m. and then he had gone straight home where their daughter could confirm that he had been, and that he stayed behind during the search in case she had left and she came home. They wanted somebody to be there in case she called or
valid
came back home. Talking to the family was not a complete dead end, though. Because Cesar, Eridania's brother that worked in the building, explained to detectives that he had helped her get the job just 6 months prior, and that she had recently talked about quitting because she thought she was being stalked by someone in the building.
Oh, interesting.
Her daughters confirmed that she had been scared of a man who worked in the building that had twice followed her while she was cleaning and would just stare at her. The third time it happened, or the third time that she encountered the man, he tried to speak with her, which creeped her out even more.
Okay, so we have FBI's Most Wanted #1.
Perhaps. Cesar had convinced her to stay just another week at the job while he tried to help her find another job.
Okay.
And so, unfortunately, now he's like, oh my God, now she's missing. And I'm the one that made her stay.
Well, but you didn't know Cesar.
Yeah. Detectives quickly learned that due to his position at the building, the man who she was scared of knew everything about its operations. What time everything opened, closed, when people arrived, when they left, who was there, and when, etc. So, they found Stalker Man, and he claimed he was with a group of friends that evening playing ping pong.
No comment.
The entire group of friends were then interviewed and confirmed that he had been with them, and each were able to recall enough details to corroborate that he could not have been at 2 Rector Street that night.
I'm still suspicious, but I'm not sure how. I don't have any proof, but I don't like him very much.
Yeah. So 2 days went by, and detectives were no closer to knowing what happened. So they did another search.
They still haven't found her?
Nope.
2 days.
2 days. And they do another search with the K9 unit.
I was wondering when the dogs were coming.
The dogs alerted twice in the utility room to the building.
Okay.
This was the area that housed the air conditioning and heating system.
Oh, no.
So they searched that area more thoroughly, but found nothing. So they believed that it was a false hit.
But they're not looking in the heating or the air conditioning.
You're so smart.
They're not listening to the smartest people in the room, which are the dogs.
Exactly. Frustrated, though, detectives felt like they hit a wall, but good old video god, Detective McLeod, was still back at the station this whole time.
I need you to understand the way that I'm picturing him. He's on a cloud. with video surveillance footage around his head. And he's meditatively going through the footage as the video gone.
That is a way calmer version of this. This guy was like, he apparently listens to heavy metal the entire time that he's doing this. Even as a cop, and like when he started in the 1980s, he like had a mullet and was
I love him.
Yeah.
He can have a mullet and be listening to music on the cloud.
Mean, yeah. Your version sounded so peaceful, and I'm like, no, he's like hardcore.
We need to add some chaos.
Yeah. There has to be some sort of chaos in there.
Somebody who's artistic, please draw him. Please.
So he's back at the station, still reviewing everything, hundreds of hours of security footage. And he hadn't found footage of Eridania, but he continued searching for anything unusual. And the only thing he found was that a maintenance guy who was working that night, his behavior seemed a little off. He was working the freight elevator, but then he is seen kind of all over the place. In the basement, then to his locker area, then back up to one of the floors. Then he disappeared for about 45 minutes. But the last place he was seen was like up on one of the floors. He disappears for 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden he's spotted again in the basement. The detective knew that the only way he could have gotten there was from the stairwell, which apparently they have all these cameras, but they have none in the stairwells.
That's actually pretty common.
Yeah. In the footage from the basement, he was seen kind of looking around. Like he's looking to see if he's followed or something. Seems suspicious. The man in question was 26-year-old Joseph Pabon.
That's okay. That's an interesting last name. Pabon.
Pabon. It looks like Pabon.
It's fun to say.
But it's pronounced Pabon.
It's fun to say.
Mm-hmm. So they give good old Joseph a call, and he agreed to meet with detectives at the precinct. In the interview, he told them he'd been working the freight elevator that evening, in which he would take the cleaning ladies to the floors they were scheduled to clean. He said he saw Eridania when he dropped her off at the 8th floor, which was where they found her cart and hair clip. Joseph swore that was the last time he saw her. Something besides his story wasn't sitting right with one of the detectives, though. It was the middle of summer, July, and despite being in the northeast of our country, if you've never been to New York City in the summer...
Oh, it's hot.
It gets hot.
It gets real hot.
Because it's a city.
Yeah.
There's not enough trees and such to like tamper down the hotness.
It's hot.
Despite that, Joseph was wearing a long sleeve thermal shirt with a t-shirt over top of it.
Okay.
So the detectives said, "What's up with your shirt? How about you take that shirt off?" And like they made him take his shirt off.
Strip, maintenance man.
And lo and behold, he had scratches all over his arms, chest, shoulder, and back. The detectives asked him to explain what are all these scratches. And Joseph claimed that when he was working the freight elevator the evening that Eridania went missing, he had also been tasked with helping a construction crew. He said he had to help them take a bunch of rebar and framing up and down, and scratched himself while helping to load and unload it.
You see, we would have evidence of that.
Well, without even looking at the footage, one of the detectives immediately knew that he was likely lying, because this detective was well versed in union rules.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not allowed. Somebody call OSHA.
So he first confirmed, he asked Joseph, "You're a union guy, right?" And Joseph confirmed. And then he called him out on it. He said, if you helped them load and unload, you're breaking union rules because they do not allow for workers to do anything than what they were tasked, meaning that if he was tasked with running the freight elevator that evening, the only thing he should have touched was the controls on that elevator and nothing else. The other detective chimed in telling Joseph that if he was holding her somewhere, like, just tell her where she is, man.
Yeah.
And we'll find her and, like, we'll work this out kind of thing. We'll take her back to her family. We'll work it out. Joseph continued to swear he did nothing to her. He doesn't have her. He doesn't know where she is. So,
Joseph, buddy, I'm not believing you.
After 14 hours of questioning and him maintaining that he did nothing wrong, they asked for his DNA.
Yeah.
And he agreed. He even swabbed himself.
Okay, well, that's kind of weird.
It very much is. They let him go, but continuously had officers follow him and made no attempt to hide the fact that they were doing so. Because they were pretty strongly like, yeah, we don't buy your story. So we're going to follow you and see if you lead us to her or lead us to some other shady business that has something to do with her.
Right. Because, I mean, you're just looking around the basement and popping up in and out and not seemingly doing any work at all that day. So,
right. Though nothing about it made sense, they had to consider that Eridania may have left the building. So they then spread the search out. They began searching through security footage from various sources in the surrounding area of the building. Still, they found no evidence of her leaving the building, but they did find footage of Joseph Pabon purchasing alcohol at a nearby store while on break from his shift that evening.
Oh, man. That's not smart.
Correct.
Don't drink on that job.
They speculated that it was possible Eridania caught Joseph drinking on the job. A fight ensued, and he just tried to cover it up. However, they still didn't have the evidence needed to arrest him. So, while they continued to follow him, they also conducted a search through the landfill that the building's garbage was dumped.
That was smart of them to look there.
Yeah, because they realized if he actually did kill her, he may have placed her in one of the dumpsters, and that wasn't the immediate thought when the initial search took place.
Right, because at that point, they're still looking for a living Eridania.
Correct. Right. So they have that search done. While it gave the family hope when she was not found in the landfill, it just frustrated the detectives further because they're still like, well, we can't charge this guy unless we have a body or her, you know, if she is still alive. At that point, though, they were pretty confident she was likely dead. And until they found her, like I said, they don't have enough evidence. So they were stuck. Now, unfortunately, they were also feeling pressure from the public because it had become such a big story in the city.
Mm-hmm.
They had already spent so many resources on the investigation with no success that they were going to be forced to move on with other cases, even though every one of them wanted desperately to find answers. Then, one of the detectives had a conversation with their chief about it. And the chief was kind of like, so what are you thinking? Like, what else can you do? And this particular detective was like, she has to still be in the building.
Yeah, there's literally no way that she has left. They've exhausted all of those options.
Yes.
I mean, it's hard because I have a feeling I know where she is.
Yeah.
Because the dogs know. And I listen to the dogs.
Exactly. So, on July 11th, 4 days after she went missing, that chief ordered them to do another canvass of the building. And with a team of more than 100 officers, they searched again. And as soon as they got off the elevator of the 12th floor, They smelled death. The floor was unoccupied as it had been under construction. Eridania was still nowhere to be seen. Right. They go and they look and they're like, oh. But when officers looked up, they could see a bloody residue coming from the air conditioning duct. They called in the forensic team and opened the duct to find her body just placed inside. Mm-hmm. And detectives then realized the canine dogs had been accurate after all.
Yep.
They found out at some point after they piece everything together that the air to the 12th floor had been functional during that first search when the dogs alerted. Mm-hmm. Because you probably, I'm assuming if you're like me, you're thinking, how did nobody in the building smell this smell of death? When the dogs alerted initially, it would make sense that a dog would smell it, but not a human yet.
Right.
Right? But eventually, as decomposition starts to take place and that whole floor smells like death, how did nobody else in the building smell it? Well, they found out that after that initial first search, as they moved on with construction, they had actually shut off the air system to that floor because of the construction, because they didn't want the dust going through the whole system. So somehow they could shut that one off.
Right.
Which just kept all of the smell contained to that floor. And this is all within just a matter of a few days. So I don't know if it was like over the weekend or something, because I also thought like, but what about the construction workers? How did they? So I'm guessing like, construction sometimes they're doing multiple jobs and so they skip a few days at one job is my best guess.
Right.
Sadly, her body had decomposed beyond recognition just in those few days. She had been hogtied and gagged with a yellow and black duct tape, like the ones used in commercial buildings on like, the example that I can think of is places like stairs or like uneven floor, just as a caution to people to watch their step. This is the hard part. Well, it's all hard, but the cross pendant from her necklace was inside her mouth, and she had been gagged so tightly that her tongue was pushed back, blocking her throat. Eridania's family was obviously destroyed by the news of how she was found. They absolutely could not wrap their minds around why someone would do that to her. Now, in one of my sources, they say that the medical examiner found no evidence of sexual assault or any other major injuries.
Okay.
They ruled it homicidal asphyxiation, or in layman's terms, she basically suffocated to death because her tongue was blocking her airway. Detectives anxiously awaited the results of the DNA swabbing and fingernail clippings from the autopsy. In the meantime, they dug into Joseph Pabon's background and found that he was involved in several domestic violence cases against women in his life.
I'm not shocked.
Shocking. One included an incident with an ex-girlfriend where he shattered all of her car windows with a bowling ball after an argument.
Interesting choice of weapon.
They were confident that Joseph Pabon was their guy, but they needed the physical evidence in order to move forward. They continued to watch him around the clock as they waited because they didn't want him to take off, but also because they knew he was in another relationship and they didn't want to give him the space to harm her as well.
That was smart.
Detectives got the call with the results on July 17th, 10 days after Eridania's disappearance. Joseph Pabon was a match to both DNA swabs and fingernail clippings, without a doubt. His arrest was kind of like something out of a movie. They notified the team that was following him that they were coming, and they like kind of worked it out to get his location, and they literally surrounded the vehicle he was in on a side street, like near his home.
Right.
I'm sure the others in the car and the neighbors were all in complete shock over such a dramatic arrest, but they didn't want to chance him taking off or like he was with other people. Like, I think his girlfriend was in the car because it appeared that he was in the back seat of the car.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't want to chance like other people getting involved and whatever. But after his arrest, he immediately lawyered up.
Boo. I mean, smart, but boo. We don't want you to do that.
So that meant no questions were being answered. Still, he was charged with kidnapping and first-degree murder. At the trial, the prosecution contended that Joseph tracked Eridania down, kidnapped her, took her to the unoccupied floor of the building, bound her, and left her for dead. Their evidence that he tracked her down was testimony from a coworker that he had asked where she was just before he disappeared from the security cameras for nearly 45 minutes.
That's so weird.
Yeah. The defense team pushed the narrative that the investigators made a case out of coincidences and claimed that she could have come into contact with his DNA through cleaning. Under her nails. According to the ABC 30 Live article listed in the show notes, the defense went on to argue that the scratches on Joseph could have come from, quote, heavy lifting at his job. I don't know about you, but we do like DIY projects on our house and heavy lifting, and my husband works a job where he sometimes has to like do heavy lifting or, you know, works with construction type materials. He doesn't come home with scratches all over his front and back.
You don't get defensive wounds from heavy lifting, my friends.
Yeah. And like if you did, it wouldn't be the same. He had said rebar and framing.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it would be more like a gouge here and like, it wouldn't be scratches. Like, they're just different.
No.
Give me a break.
No.
Well, the jury took 2 days to deliberate and came back with a guilty verdict to kidnapping. But they only found him guilty of the lesser charge of second-degree murder.
Were they saying his intentions were to like come back and not to kill her?
I think that they probably didn't think that it was proven to be premeditated, because really the only part that shows premeditation is the fact that he was looking for her.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean his intention was to murder her.
Well, right. I mean, I can understand that.
Yeah. It was truly difficult for Eridania's family to feel a sense of justice, though, because they say Joseph showed absolutely no sign of remorse throughout the trial. He refused to give them any sort of answers as to what actually happened or why it happened. And then, be ready to be pissed even more.
Oh, gosh.
This asshole added insult to injury by laughing at them. Clearly laughing at them in the courtroom.
I don't even know what to say. That's just, it's horrible.
He was sentenced 25 years to life. He is currently serving time in Sing Sing, which I don't know how it is today, but I know when I was growing up, it like had a reputation for being a really terrible prison.
Oh, okay.
He will be eligible for parole on July 12th, 2034. He has, of course, appealed the conviction, claiming ineffective counsel.
Well, buddy, you really didn't give him much to work with.
Yeah. And of course, those appeals have been denied because he couldn't show that they deprived him of a fair trial, or that the couple of things that the appellate court found that was like, okay, that's not great. was like, but that wouldn't have changed the outcome. So,
Right.
no. Understandably, Eridania's family still struggles with the loss of the matriarch of their family. And they did go on to sue several entities connected to the building, including the security company and maintenance company. But on the one document I did find regarding the suit, the court ruled on a motion for summary judgment by the defendants, by the companies. And they like granted part of it and denied part of it. I couldn't find any documents that showed like the final outcome of that. But I will say this. In their suit, they claimed that she was sexually assaulted as well.
Okay.
But according to my other sources, she was not. So I don't know. I don't know if there was like something done that it's like technically it can be considered like sexual battery.
Right.
But it wasn't particularly rape.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't have a definitive answer on that, but according to my main sources, they specifically said she wasn't raped or there was no talk of it.
Right.
So if the family couldn't get answers, I just hope that they at least got something in the way of financial compensation through those lawsuits so that they could get some help with, you know, funeral expenses and maybe her kids' futures. At least her youngest daughter was still a teenager at the time. And I think even her oldest kids were like no more than young adults.
Yeah, young adults or not.
So, would you choose a man or a bear in the woods?
Bear.
Bear.
Nobody's shocked that I'm choosing
100% bear.
Bear.
Yeah. Same.
There's a lot of good points that people have made on other social media platforms about the man or bear debate.
My favorite
Okay.
is, do you know Dylan Michael White?
What sounds familiar?
Dad chats.
Yes, dad chats.
Okay. So he has dad chats like with his mom and dad chats. And then he has his own page that's just his name, Dylan Michael White. And he's an attorney. He came with receipts. And I love it.
I don't remember what he did.
I think he actually did like 2 videos on it.
Yeah.
Because he did the initial one and then people still tried to argue. So then he came back with a second one and was like, okay, let's take your argument there.
Right. I mean, just the statistics alone of like bear attacks versus man attacks.
That, but for me, take all statistics out of it. My favorite quote, I'm really terrible with quotes, but I'm sorry if I butcher it, but basically it was like, the worst thing a bear can do to me is kill me.
Right. Yeah. Also,
Done.
like a bear.
I'm not scared to die.
Yeah.
But I am scared to live with like the trauma and pain and everything that can happen otherwise.
Yeah.
So.
I picked a bear.
Same. I would have a tea party with the bear.
I would put the bear in a funny hat. At your tea party. Well, I feel absolutely horrible for Eridania. Wow.
I know. What do you say? There's nothing to say.
I wouldn't have been able to put this case down either. This is a really interesting one. Especially because we have no reason, like no motive. Like nothing. He just didn't like women, basically.
From what we can tell. Yeah, that's all we can tell. I mean, there is a chance that she saw him drinking or she said something that you're, but like, so what if she did?
Yeah, she's probably just gonna mind her business. I am speechless, truly.
Yeah. Same. So there you go. Well, tell us your thoughts on social media.
Yes.
And obviously, the emoji this week, if you're still listening and you want a shout out on Sunday shout outs on social media, obviously the emoji to choose is a bear. Yeah. That's all.
That's all she wrote. Man, this is a roughie. But you did a good job covering it, and we will see you guys next week.
Yeah. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.